Smoke just sucks, period. Last year was the worst they've ever seen. Half-mile viz, and you're trying to land in with smoke, and the challenge is insane.
This is going to be the most immersive Sun and Fun coverage we've ever brought to the Future in Flight podcast. Coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where there are fresh waffles every morning, this is the Future in Flight podcast. I'm your host, Sean Starker. And today, we're going way off the beaten path. I'm talking about a place where the roads literally end and the flying begins. A place where a kid who hated airplanes, getting sick on the floats, washing his clothes at the dock, hated them, grew up to run one of the most incredible bush operations in Canada. 12 wilderness camps, 9 aircraft, and a story that started with one sentence you overheard when he was 15 years old that changed everything. We're heading up to Red Lake, Ontario to meet Nate Herbert and the crew at Black Moose Outposts. You're going to hear what it's really like to land a $5 million airplane in muddy water in half-mile visibility with smoke rolling in from a wildfire. And you're going to hear why Nate says bush flying is the one corner of aviation that AI simply cannot take over. Then, we've got the vintage aircraft spotlight. And honestly, after Nate's story, there's only one plane we could feature, the legendary de Havilland Beaver. And stick around to the end because I'm going to tell you exactly what's coming up during our wall-to-wall coverage of Sun and Fun. Live broadcasts, a cross-country cannonball run for charity, formation flying behind the scenes. It's going to be a big week and you're getting a front row seat. We're clear for departure. Future in Flight, let's roll. There's a sound that some kids wake up to every morning. Not an alarm clock, not a parent calling from downstairs. A beaver.
Leave it to Beaver.
No, not that one. A de Havilland Beaver. The airplane. You know. Big radial engine, usually on floats. 600 horsepower of legend buzzing low over the water. And if you grew up in Red Lake, Ontario, that sound was just Tuesday. Today, we're heading somewhere most of our listeners have never been. And I mean that literally. We're going to the furthest northwest point you can reach by road in the province of Ontario, Canada. We're going somewhere that's closer to Hudson Bay than it is to the nearest big city. We're going where the map runs out and where the real flying begins. This is the story of Nate Herbert, bush pilot, firefighter, outfitter, and the man behind Black Moose Outpost. Here's something you don't hear very often in a conversation about aviation careers. Nate Herbert used to hate flying.
I would get sick. I'd have to take gravel just to make it to hockey school. And, I'd be landing and be puking off the floats and having to wash my clothes. And I just really, really hated it. And he used to do loops all the time in the Citabria. And, he loved it. My sister loved it. And I just hated it.
His dad was a pilot in Red Lake, a remote northern community that was, believe it or not, once the second busiest airport in the world during the gold rush of the 1930s, second only to Chicago. Out there, airplanes weren't a hobby. They were how you got to hockey school, how your family got to the 2 flyout camps that were accessible only by air, how you went pretty much anywhere at all. But young Nate wanted nothing to do with it. Until one day, when he was about 15, he overheard a conversation he was never supposed to hear.
And my mom told my dad, because he had an airplane, and she's like, if your son doesn't get his license, we're going to give the airplane to your cousin. And literally that day just clicked. I'm like, no way in hell my cousin's getting this airplane.
That's it. That's the aviation origin story right there. Not some romantic dream of flying into the sunset. Just a 15-year-old kid absolutely refusing to let his cousin win. You got to respect the game. He got his license at 18, jumped straight onto skis for the winter, got his float rating the following summer, and never looked back. For most of us, if we want to get somewhere, we drive, maybe hop on a plane for something major. But in Red Lake, the airplane is the car.
The next closest town was a 3-hour drive, and it's 50 minutes dock to dock with the airplane, and you go get to meet, kids your age that you never seen before, right? Because living in the bush is kind of really secluded to the people you grew up with is really small. So it was like, flying down there to see girls you never met before or make new friends.
Okay, so aviation was his social life, his transportation network, his ticket to the wider world, and somewhere in there between the Cross Lake ferry runs and the early morning takeoffs, it stopped being a chore and became something else entirely.
I'll fly 14-hour day for fire and then literally come home, eat, and go jump in the Cub and just go burn fuel. Because that's my way to relax, and it's not a job. It's just love, I think.
The year is 2020. The world has stopped. And Nate Herbert is sitting down with a friend, staring at a blank piece of paper.
What do we want to do? What is your dream job? And just literally drew it up on paper. And then we decided, okay, let's do it. And yeah, that's kind of been history of that. It was supposed to be 2 camps and 1 airplane. Now we have 12 camps and 9 airplanes.
12 camps, 9 airplanes, from a drawing in a pandemic. Black Moose Outpost is a wilderness adventure outfitter based out of Red Lake, and it's not your grandfather's fishing camp. We're talking everything from rustic fly-out cabins on remote lakes to high-end lodges with indoor plumbing, air conditioning, private rooms, and a private chef. The kind of trip where a private jet lands in Red Lake and the guests step directly onto a Cessna Caravan and into the Canadian bush. The fleet that makes it all happen is itself a conversation. 2 de Havilland Beavers, 1 with a Stoll kit, 1 on oversized floats. A Blackhawk modified Caravan on Whipline 8750 floats, a Caravan EX with a brand new Yukon prop. And the crown jewel of the operation? A Pilatus PC-6 Porter. That Porter, Nate says, is the most capable bush plane he's ever flown, full stop.
You can drop that thing into, 150 to 200 foot gap in the lake that you need to get into out of the wind, and it'll just set down and stop right there. It's completely insane. It is by far the most capable airplane I've flown in the bush by far.
Here's the thing about flying in the Canadian bush. There's no weather radar. There's no ATC handholding you through the weather. There's smoke and wind and fog that comes out of nowhere, and lakes that look perfectly clean from the air but have rocks hiding 3 feet below the surface.
Everything is different. There's stuff floating in the water, there's hidden rocks underneath, or there's water flow. If you're in a river, it changes from the beginning of the season to the end of the season to the mid-season, from water levels to storms to, stuff floating around to winds. But, it's the wheel guys, you're going to an approved runway. That's the same thing all the time. You know the distance you have, your aircraft performance, but out here and flying floats it changes all the time. It's never, not one is ever the same as the other.
That's Nate's answer when I asked him what people don't understand about floatplane operations. It sounds simple, but think about it. When you land at a paved airport, the runway is the same as it was yesterday, the same as it'll be tomorrow. You know the distance, you know the surface. But on a lake, the water level changes with the season. Debris drifts in overnight. A strong wind can turn a glassy, calm approach into a textbook, white-knuckle water landing in about 30 seconds. And then there's fire season.
Smoke just sucks, period. Last year was the worst they've ever seen. It wasn't a week or 2 or 3 days of just socked in. It was months of it. Smoke is a challenge. You have the thick bands. I don't make my guys push through it, so it's all on their comfort zone. We try to teach them to play on the safe side. But smoke is something you can push. You cannot push cloud or you cannot push fog, because that will kill you.
When wildfires ignite across northern Ontario, Black Moose's aircraft become part of the emergency response. Initial attack, crew transport, fire mapping. Nate and his pilots fly firefighters and equipment into communities that have no road access, no time to wait, and sometimes a fire burning to the edge of the sprinkler line they just barely managed to set up in time.
You get into lakes that aren't clear, so you're literally rolling the dice sometimes. We do a lot of fire support flying, and the northern communities up there so you have to follow the trenches of the water, where the water is flowing, and then you start adding, smoke to that half-mile viz, and you're trying to land in with smoke, and the challenge is insane. I think that's probably why I love the fire flying stuff so much. You're dealing with landing and having to pull up to an Aboriginals camp that is either a pallet tied to a rock as their dock, or it's a rock, and you're holding this $5 million airplane with $1 million set of floats against a rock while the firefighters are jumping off.
Adventure is the word that gets used a lot when people talk about bush flying, but sometimes that adventure has a very quiet, very serious other side. Okay, so let's say you're listening to this and something clicked. You want in. What does it take to fly in the bush? Nate's answer might surprise you.
I'll go through a ton of resumes and a lot of applicants for the job, but the biggest thing for us is the hard work aspect of if you did bush firefighting or welding or farm work or something that's really hands-on work. The flying side, I think you can teach the flying to anyone.
Float hours help you get through the door, but character gets you the job. And the job itself, it's not going away. When I asked Nate whether bush flying has a future, he didn't hesitate.
AI can't take over bush flying. There's no autopilot. There's no auto landing. It's any career in aviation. I think it's probably the most secure, besides maintenance.
And in a world that's increasingly automated, increasingly digitized, increasingly distant from the physical and the raw, Nate thinks that's actually the point.
It's actually an adventure. It's not getting on an airline and sitting on a bus and going somewhere. It's adventure.
Nate Herbert is a bush pilot, firefighter, wildlife manager, outfitter, and one of the most honest ambassadors for what aviation can really be when it grows up somewhere wild. His operation, Black Moose Outpost, runs 12 wilderness camps and 9 aircraft out of Red Lake, Ontario. If you want to fish a lake no one else has touched this century, or you want your first floatplane flight to be something you talk about for the rest of your life, this is the place. Find Black Moose Outpost online at their website and look for Nate on Instagram at Nate Herbert. Links are in the show notes. And if you're a young pilot or a young person who hasn't gotten their license yet, and this episode lit something up in you, reach out to them. They'll take applications, they'll train from the ground up, and they care about character as much as ours. Coming up, the Vintage Aircraft Spotlight, where we take a look at the de Havilland Beaver. When your mission takes you beyond the runway, reliability matters. For more than 60 years, Whip Air has been helping pilots turn lakes, rivers, and coastlines into runways, building industry-leading whipline floats trusted around the world. From backcountry adventures to commercial operations, whipline floats are engineered for performance, safety, and durability, so you can focus on the mission ahead. Explore the freedom of amphibious aviation at whipair.com and discover where your next runway could be. Whip Air, innovation on the water, confidence in the air. Today on the Vintage Aircraft Spotlight, we're talking about one of the toughest, most beloved planes ever built, a machine that opened up the Canadian North and changed bush flying forever. It's called the de Havilland Beaver, and if you want to understand what makes a real workhorse aircraft, you need to know this plane. Picture this, it's 1947. The Second World War just ended, and across Canada, especially in the north, there's this massive problem nobody's quite solved yet. You've got remote communities that are completely cut off from the rest of the world. No roads, no railroads, just wilderness, lakes, and endless sky. People need supplies. They need to be able to get in and out faster. They need a plane that can land on a tiny lake or a sandbar or a frozen river in January, grab some cargo, and get going. The planes that existed back then, they were either too big, too slow, or they needed a runway the size of a football field. They weren't built for rough landings. They just weren't tough enough. De Havilland Canada looked at the challenge and thought, we could definitely do better. In August of 1947, the Beaver took its first flight. And here's the thing about this plane. It was designed with exactly one mission in mind. Be the plane that could do anything, anywhere with anybody. Now, the Beaver is small, about the size of a school bus with wings. It's powered by a 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney Wasp Junior engine. That's really not a lot of power, but the engineers at de Havilland figured out how to make it count. They built it light, built it strong, and they built it simple. The landing gear? Absolutely genius. You could put it on wheels, skis, or floats. The same plane. Just swap out the gear in a couple hours and suddenly you're operating off a glacier in one season and a lake in the next. And the STOL performance? That short takeoff and landing was unlike anything pilots had ever seen. A Beaver could be airborne in about 500 feet, sometimes less. Imagine landing on a stretch of gravel the size of 3 parking spaces. For a Beaver, that's a runway. Over 1,600 of these planes were built before production ended in 1967. And here's the wild part. Many are still flying today. The Beaver didn't just become a plane, it became a symbol. Ask any bush pilot worth their salt about the greatest aircraft ever built, and I guarantee you this plane is on their list. In Alaska, in the Arctic, in remote parts of Canada that you'd never think civilization could reach, Beavers opened these doors. They hauled firefighting equipment. They flew medevacs. Missionaries used them to reach isolated communities. Surveyors used them to map territory that nobody had been able to access before. And what's remarkable is the simplicity of the design. There's no fancy computer system, no fly-by-wire. It's an all-metal, high-wing monoplane with a big cabin and a straightforward engine that just keeps working. Pilots will tell you, a Beaver is honest. It doesn't surprise you. It doesn't have bad habits. You fly it the right way, and it will get you home. That reputation for toughness and reliability made it legendary in a very specific way. When you're flying over the Arctic or landing on a strip you've never seen before or carrying a load that's pushing the weight limits, you want a plane that's built to forgive mistakes and designed for rough treatment. The Beaver delivers every time. And here's another thing that's incredible. It's been almost 80 years since that first flight. Hundreds of these planes are still flying. Some are original. Some have been upgraded with turboprop engines that pack even more power. Bush pilots who've never met each other on opposite sides of the world will look at a Beaver and know exactly what it represents. That's not just an aircraft. That's a legend. So why should we care about a Bush plane from the 1940s? Because the Beaver is a masterclass in smart design. The engineers at de Havilland, Canada didn't have computers. They didn't have wind tunnels. They had a problem. They understood their audience, the bush pilots who were going to use this thing, and they built exactly what was needed. Nothing fancy, no unnecessary weight, no features that didn't serve the mission. That's the thinking that creates great aircraft, and it's the thinking that's going to drive the next generation of bush planes, short takeoff aircraft, and utility aviation. If you're interested in aviation careers, whether that's as a pilot, an engineer, a mechanic, a designer, the Beaver teaches you something essential. The best solutions are often the simplest ones. The de Havilland Beaver proved that great aviation doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be built for the job, built strong and built to last. If you want to see a Beaver in person, check your local air shows or vintage aviation museums. And if you've ever met a bush pilot, ask them about their Beaver stories. I guarantee you they've got some good ones. This has been the Vintage Aircraft Spotlight. Coming up next, we take a look at what's in store for the Future in Flight podcast during the week of Sun and Fun. If you've been following the Future in Flight podcast for any amount of time, you know that Sun and Fun isn't just an air show. It's 5 days of aviation culture distilled into one place. Thousands of aircraft, tens of thousands of people, and some of the most iconic names in aviation, past, present, and future. This year, as with every year, I'm not just attending Sun and Fun, I'm going there to cover it. And that means you're getting a front row seat to everything happening at one of the world's most important aviation events. So let me tell you what's coming up. Starting this week, the Future in Flight podcast becomes a field operation. I'm going to be working as a reporter for Sun and Fun Radio. You can catch that broadcast on liveatc.net and on AM 1510 right here in Lakeland. That means I'm out hunting for the stories that matter to you. The interviews that don't make the main stage. The pilots, the innovators, and the people building the future of aviation, one conversation at a time. On Thursday, after the air show wraps, we're going live. The Future in Flight podcast, broadcasting from Sun and Fun Radio on the legendary Sun and Fun Radio deck. We're taking a full live show with all our friends who've been in the trenches all week. This is going to be loud, it's going to be real, and it's going to be the kind of conversation you can only have when you're surrounded by people who live and breathe aviation. And that's not even the wildest part of the week. You might have heard about the 31 hours for Tango 31 Cannonball Run. If you haven't, let me set the scene. Charlie Duffy and Chris Holder, two men on a mission, are about to do something completely unreasonable in the name of something completely worthwhile. They're raising money for Tango 31 Aero Club, and they're doing it by driving a Factory 5 Type 65 coupe across the country. This isn't just any car. We're talking over 400 horsepower of pure automotive ambition. And these two are going to catch up with me at Sun and Fun before they head out on this wild adventure. We're going to hear what drives someone, pun absolutely intended, to take on the 31-hour challenge. What's the dream on the other side of all that speed and endurance? Stories like this, the kind where someone says, hey, what if we did something crazy and raise money for the future of aviation at the same time? Those are the stories that show what the aviation community is really made of. But here's the thing about Sun and Fun. There are far too many incredible stories happening at once, so we're bringing in help. Aero News Network, working with our parent company Creative Relay Media, is producing a dedicated series all about affordable aviation. My team, plus reporters from across the industry, are bringing you the best stories from this event. We're talking performers, business aviation leaders, government agencies, influencers, and the people who are actually changing what's possible in flying. And if you catch me on the Aviation Tram Talk series with Jordan Peed, you'll know I'm pulling double duty that day. On top of everything else, Creative Relay Media teamed up with Hilo Social Media to bring you exclusive behind-the-scenes coverage of the Full Throttle Formation team. We're talking live meetups, captivating show footage, and moments you won't see anywhere else. This is the content that shows why people are inspired to pursue aviation. This is the why behind the fly. And here's why I'm telling you all of this. Sun and Fun is where aviation happens. Not just the industry, but the culture. It's where a 10-year-old stands on the tarmac and sees a bush plane and thinks, that's what I want to do. It's where a startup pitches their new aircraft design to investors. It's where a former pilot shares wisdom with the next generation. And for this week, the Future in Flight podcast is going to be right in the middle of it all, pulling out the stories that light people up, that make you think, yeah, I could do that. I could be a part of this. That's what this week is about. It's not just coverage, it's connection. It's the moment where thousands of people realize they're not alone in this dream. They're a part of something much bigger. So if you're heading to Sun and Fun, keep an eye out. Stop by Sun and Fun Radio. Catch us on liveatc.net or AM 1510. And Thursday after the air show, join us for the live broadcast. Bring your questions. Bring your energy. Bring your stories. And if you're listening from home, stay tuned. We're dropping content all week. Some recorded on the fly. Some featuring the people we meet in Lakeland. This is going to be the most immersive Sun and Fun coverage we've ever brought to the Future in Flight podcast. And we're excited to have you join us. Man, what a ride today. From the lakes of Northern Ontario to the ramp at Sun and Fun. That's a lot of ground to cover, and we're just getting started. Nate Herbert's story is one of those reminders that an aviation career doesn't always start with a dream. Sometimes it starts with stubbornness, or a dare, or just refusing to let your cousin get the airplane. And that's kind of the point. There's no single doorway into this world. There's 1,000 of them, and half of them don't look like doorways at all until you walk through. Before we go, I want to give a huge thank you to our friends at Whip-Air. Their support helps us keep building the future in flight, literally, by making it possible for us to bring you these stories, these voices, and this community every single week. We're super grateful for Whip-Air and everything they do for aviation and for this show. Now, if this episode did something for you, if Nate's story fired you up or the Beaver segment made you want to go hunt one down at your local airfield, do me a favor. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening, and if you've got 30 seconds, leave us a rating and a review. That's the single biggest thing you can do to help others find the show. Every review puts us in front of one more aviation enthusiast who might hear this and think, yeah, I could do that. Thank you for flying with us today. Seriously, this show exists because you show up, and that means the world. We'll see you out there, and up there, and at Sun and Fun.